So I'm Rich Jacobs with Drive Smart Virginia. I appreciate you joining me this morning. This is a basic general traffic safety presentation. Not a whole lot of statistics and figures and stuff like that. You'll see some videos, some of it, it's kind of entertaining. Some of it's very informative, but basically my job's very easy. It's to remind you of things that you already know pretty much. Don't drink and drive, don't speed. We'll just give you some examples of why those are good ideas. So we'll get up to where we were. This is all the stuff you missed. Okay. Every day, Virginians take to our roads without the protection of seatbelts, airbags, or any vehicle at all. These men and women are Virginia's transportation workers. We depend on them to improve our roads, and they depend on us to keep them safe. Don't zone out in work zones. Distracted driving is causing more crashes and more fatalities in Virginia. Make our work zones safe. Visit safeworkzonesva.com to learn more. Brought to you by Drive Smart Virginia and the Virginia Transportation Construction Alliance. We put that PSA out a couple of years ago with the Roadway Construction Alliance because they were, VDOT keeps track of how many of their workers and contractors are killed or injured in work zone incursions. But there are other workers also who are struck in work zones. Holding a cell phone while driving in a Virginia road work zone is against the law. It's a $250 fine. It's a no question. There's no excuse. If the cop sees the phone in your hand, you're in a work zone. That's it. There's no question. You just get a ticket. And the new broader anti-distracted driving restriction is an addition to Virginia's existing ban on now this is I need to update this slide. Virginia recently passed a handheld phone ban for all public roadways in Virginia, and that is a $150 fine, I believe, is the first fine, and then it goes up to $250 for a second or subsequent offense. That is also, cop sees a phone in your hand, that's it, no question, they can pull you over and write you a ticket. And that is already in effect, but it's not being enforced because we're doing an education period until January 1st. So beginning January 1st, you'll start seeing police pull folks over for simply having the phone in their hand. It's okay to use it hands-free, but if a cop sees it in your hand, that's it. There's no, hey, I was just checking Waze, I was just looking at my Jeep. It doesn't matter what you're doing, phone in your hand, no good. Driving under the influence, still a problem. Made a lot of progress over the last few decades with seat belts, with driving under the influence, but still every day almost 30 people in the United States die in drunk driving crashes. That's one person every 50 minutes. And although these deaths have fallen by a third in the last 3 decades, drunk driving crashes claim more than 10,000 lives per year. And we've noticed an increase during COVID-19 restrictions in drunk driving. Last year in Virginia, 188 people were killed in alcohol-related crashes. That was down slightly, which is good compared to 2018. More than 4,000 people were injured in alcohol-related crashes. That also was down slightly. So you see these fluctuations year to year, and you hope that they'll turn into trends. In 2019, more than 22% of all traffic fatalities were alcohol-related. So that's a significant number. A significant portion of traffic fatalities were alcohol-related, and 177 drinking drivers were killed. That was up. Here are your alcohol-related crashes and fatalities, 2016 through 2018. We didn't have the 2019 numbers when this slide was prepared, and the 2019 numbers were not finalized, so the trend isn't evident there in 2019, but anyway. Like I said, the numbers are going up. You can see that 2017 and 2018. Highest percentage of drunk drivers by age, 21 to 24-year-olds make up 30%, 25 to 34-year-olds, 29%, 35 to 44-year-olds, 24%, So hopefully that means we get smarter as we get older. I don't know, but certainly the younger drivers make up the largest percentage of drunk driving convictions. Here are the legal consequences. I'm not going to go through that. There are other consequences that you may not think of. You know, there's going to be a fine, probably suspended license, probably going to have to pay a lawyer to go to court with you. But there are some other consequences. I'm going to show a video here. Hopefully you can hear it. If you can't, please let me know. And the message there really simple, you know, designated sober driver. There's never an excuse anymore, or not that there ever was, but there's really no excuse to drive under the influence with so many options now. We got Uber, Lyft, taxi cabs, phone a friend, call your mom, whatever it takes. Don't drive under the influence. Distracted driving, of the 828 traffic fatalities on Virginia roadways last year, 120 of them involved distracted driving. That's cell phone use of any kind, texting, so forth. We know those numbers are low. We know they're wrong, is what I'm saying, because it's probably pretty rare that somebody, you know, staggers out of the wreckage and raises their phone over their head and says, yeah, my bad, I was texting. So unless the officer investigating the crash can positively determine that the person causing the crash was distracted, then it doesn't go on the report that way. So we know there's more distracted driving than this indicates. Distracted driving, by definition, anything that occurs when drivers divert their attention away from the driving task to focus on something else. Distracted driving has always been there. It's just so much worse now because we have so many more distractions there in the cockpit of the vehicle. You got your cell phone, which has all those apps on it, and social media, but also the layers of distraction available in the vehicle. They're actually marketed to us by automobile manufacturers, the infotainment systems built into the vehicle. When I was in high school, or when I started driving, if I wanted to adjust the tone on my stereo, I could just reach over. I didn't have to take my eyes off the road, reach over and grab the outside knob, push it in, turn it, and that adjusted the treble on my stereo. Now, with today's infotainment systems, you have to go through a touch screen menu to get to the sound. You know, it's just it's a whole nother level of distraction to do what used to be a very simple thing because it's buried in so many other layers of menus on the screen. Distracted driving is driving while doing something else. It takes your attention away from driving, and it increases, obviously, the likelihood of a motor vehicle crash. Even just having your attention, your focus on something. You could be looking at the road, but if you're thinking about something else, that's distracted driving. There are three main types of distraction: visual, where you take your eyes off the road; manual, where you take your hand or hands off the wheel; and cognitive, which is where you take your mind off the task of driving. The reason that the cell phone or smartphone is so egregiously dangerous is that it involves all three. You're not just glancing away, you're not just taking your hand off the wheel for a second, and you're not just taking your thoughts or your mind off the task of driving for more. It involves all three at the same time for an extended period of time. And people say, well, it only takes a couple of seconds for me to send a text. Well, this video shows how wrong that can be. While it may just take a few seconds to glance away to send the text, a lot can change in a few seconds. If we look at that video again, you'll see the traffic looked like it was moving in the lane in front of this driver, but then as it turns out, the traffic was stopped.
Are you okay?
And if any of you have new drivers, teen drivers, I apologize for this. This was a video that was released several years ago where they put cameras in vehicles driven by teenagers, and they left them in there for like 6 weeks. So the kids got used to having the cameras in the vehicles. They weren't hidden cameras. The kids knew they were there, and they recorded some of the driving behavior. The reason I include this video is that I'm not just picking on teens here. All of us are guilty to some extent of distracted driving, whether it's gobbling a hamburger down at lunchtime, while we're driving back to work or what have you. But you'll notice the phone plays a large role in a lot of this in this particular video. This young lady has her eyes off the road for at least 7 seconds. But she recovers nicely. I think this probably happens to her all the time.
Oh, that was my phone.
This guy's studying for a test. See the sheet of paper he's looking at? And he looks right into the camera. Yeah, mom and dad are going to love to see that video. But we're all guilty of some of, that sort of thing to some degree. The problem for less experienced drivers is they don't have enough wheel time. I mean, now there's so many more opportunities to get yourself into trouble behind the wheel with distraction, and with less wheel time under your belt, it's harder for these kids to get out of the problem they've created. So you saw a lot of that inattention causing overcorrection, and they're just not good at recovering from going off the road and things like that. University of Utah researcher David Strayer found that talking on a cell phone, and this is just talking on a cell phone, quadruples your risk of a crash, about the same as if you were driving drunk and that risk doubles again to 8 times normal if you're texting. Surveys show that we tend to recognize distracted driving when it's the other guy, the person who's doing the stoplight prayer, and the light turns green and they're in front of you and you're polite so you don't blow the horn right away, but then you finally do. They take off through the yellow light, leave you stranded at the red light. Does it ever happen? I know it's happened to me, but we tend to find excuses for when we do it. Each day, 9 people are killed and over 1,000 are injured in crashes involving distracted driving. Sharing the road. Pedestrian fatalities in Virginia are on the rise, and they have been now for several years. Unfortunately, it is driver inattention is part of it. A lot of, and not blaming the victim here, but in some cases, it is pedestrians who are crossing in places where drivers don't expect pedestrians to be crossing the road or to be in the road. And also, not all of Virginia is like Northern Virginia, where there are more pedestrian-friendly areas in Northern Virginia than, say, in Southwest Virginia. Over the past 10 years, the number of traffic deaths in urban areas has increased. It's surpassing deaths in rural areas since 2016. So even in areas where you would think the infrastructure is there for pedestrians, the traffic deaths have gone up. And this is overall traffic crashes in 2018. There was a slight decrease over the prior year. And we'll see this year with the COVID-19 restrictions, we expect to see significant reductions in overall traffic crashes, but that'll be because of the huge reduction in vehicle miles traveled. This is a flyer, no, it's a trifold brochure rather that we produced, and a lot of material is available to any Virginia resident. You can go to our website, drivesmartva.org. All of it's free. We ship it to you. It doesn't cost you a penny. It couldn't be any easier if I put it in the trunk of my car and drove it to you, which unfortunately I can't do right now because of the COVID restrictions. But a lot of that's available at our online store, drivesmartva.org. If you have a break area at your workplace or whatever, church, you can put up a little safe driving display and we'll take care of all of it and even ship it to you. This, if you know what a ghost bike is, this is a ghost bike for Lainey Krzyzewski, who was riding her bicycle home from work here in the Richmond area when she was struck by a motorist from behind in the evening after sunset. And this happened on a road that had no shoulders. It was at night. She had a bike with lights and reflectors, and the driver said he never saw her. He reported the crash the next day. Fatigue driving, and I know for what you folks do for a living, there might involve a lot of driving time, maybe a lot of hours, and that can end up to fatigue driving. More than a third of U.S. adults, just regular folks, get less than 7 hours of sleep a day, which is what we need. The attitudes about drowsy driving need to change. Fatigue has costly effects. It causes crashes. We know that if your brain needs sleep, it's going to take it. So no amount of, I'm going to drink some coffee, I'm going to be okay, I got to get this done. That it's not, if you're tired, there's just no way around it. You could easily fall asleep behind the wheel, and those crashes are devastating. They generally involve people who are driving by themselves and folks who never touch the brake when they run off the road because they were asleep. Authorities believe drowsy driving crashes are underreported. 7% of all crashes and 16.5% of fatal crashes involve drowsy driving. That's a significant number. That translates to more than 5,000 people dying in drowsy driving crashes last year alone. And we, like I said, we know that number is low. Here's what it looks like. Got somebody driving along. They come over to the next lane and bump the person in front of them. How could that happen? It happened because he's asleep. This guy drives 3 blocks asleep before that wakes him up. And this ABC News did a terrific report on what a problem fatigue driving has become. I'm just going to run this and let you see it because it's better than what I could do.
Between the hamster wheel grind at work, the commute to and from, fatigue on the open road can seem like an accepted fact of modern life. In fact, an estimated 250,000 Americans drive drowsy every day. But of course, nodding off behind the wheel can quickly turn into a very real nightmare. So the next time you find yourself with miles to go before you sleep, something to think about. From ABC's Ron Claiborne.
The video is shocking. A woman driving a car in Denver asleep at the wheel. Watch as she drifts in and out of her lane, narrowly missing other vehicles. Somehow, she never crashes.
Oh, jeez.
She drove 30 miles before a police car was finally able to pull her over. About 6,800 drivers each year aren't so lucky. They fall asleep while driving, crash, and die. Drowsy driving is the second leading cause of fatal vehicle accidents, behind only drunk driving and ahead of driving while texting. And it's not just driving that's affected. A recent study in the Journal of the American Medical Association estimated that workplace accidents from sleep deprivation cost $31 billion of damage every year.
Sleep is such a powerful drive that if you really need it, the brain is going to say, aha, sleep. And that can be an incredibly dangerous situation.
But it's driving while sleepy that is especially harrowing. Some drowsy drivers experience a phenomenon that you've probably never heard of called microsleep, where you fall asleep for just a few seconds without realizing it. I volunteered to be the guinea pig in an experiment to see how I would be affected driving without enough sleep.
I'm going to be up all night.
First, I stayed up for 32 consecutive hours.
I've hit the proverbial wall. I've almost been up 24 hours.
Hi, I'm Ron Claiborne.
Then I traveled to the Liberty Mutual Research Institute outside of Boston, where they study the effects of sleep deprivation on driving.
It can happen in the blink of an eye.
Chronic lack of sleep fogs the mind, makes people more likely to make mistakes at school or work. It makes us emotionally volatile and more prone to illness. At the research lab, I was hooked up to a brain wave monitor and a device that tracks eye movement. I feel okay now, but not great. Then I got behind the wheel of a minivan. As tired as I was, I thought I would be okay.
We'll see. We'll see. I feel like I can drive pretty well.
Then I started driving on a closed track with a researcher sitting next to me who could step on an emergency brake if things went awry.
I'm feeling pretty worn out.
Soon I was becoming sleepier and sleepier. It became a struggle to keep my eyes open and just to hold my head up. Before long, I was experiencing microsleep. I looked like a normal awake driver, but what you can't tell is that my brain is actually asleep. About half an hour in, it became more obvious. I had fallen asleep at the wheel and driven completely off the road.
That was not good.
I soon realized I just couldn't go on.
Doc, yeah, I'm done. Kid, let's throw it into park then. Good idea. Yeah.
It was just too dangerous.
That was tough.
Back in the lab, Dr. Seisler showed me just what was going on inside my brain while I was driving.
Yes, this is evidence that you're falling asleep.
My eyes were open, but see how these lines are becoming more jagged? That's sleep coming on. And these lines show my blinking is getting slower. And what about when I drove off the road?
We could see it coming in your brainwave.
Looking at the chart here, how long was my microsleep in this one episode?
So in this one episode, we're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 seconds.
What was most shocking, Dr. Seisler said, I fell asleep. I microslept 21 other times.
You had dozens of times where your eyes began rolling around in their sockets. This would happen for 2, 3, 4 seconds. You'd get a couple of good rolls in.
If I'd been driving 60 miles an hour, I would have gone the length of a football field asleep.
And then you'd come to, and then you'd keep driving.
I'd remembered none of them. Fortunately, I had been in a highly controlled situation with safety precautions, driving just 20 to 30 miles an hour. Every day, thousands of sleep-deprived Americans go whizzing along at 50, 60, 70 miles an hour, convinced, as I was, that they can outrace their own fatigue. I was in a real twilight zone the entire time. And it was scary. For Nightline, I'm Ron Claiborne in Hopkinton, Massachusetts.
Great report. Like I said, I couldn't do better. Here's a good way of thinking of it. Drowsy driving can be equated to impaired driving. If you go without sleep for 18 hours, that you're basically just as impaired as you would be if you had a blood alcohol content of 0.05. 21 hours without sleep is like being legally drunk with a BAC of 0.08. 24 hours without sleep is like 0.10 BAC. So see and there's no way around it. If you need sleep, like they said in the video, your brain is going to sleep. So the only cure for that is sleep. Drowsy driving crashes occur most frequently between midnight and 6 a.m. or in the late afternoon. Both times of the day, people experience dips in their circadian rhythm. That's the internal clock that tells you when you should be sleepy. Shift workers really suffer from that stuff. Often they involve only a single driver, as I said. There's no one else in the vehicle. You run off the road at a high rate of speed, completely asleep, and it happens a lot on rural roads and highways. Road rage. I see a lot of this when I'm traveling around the Commonwealth, going to do presentations. Here's an example. There's several different types of road rage going on in this clip. Apparently, these two have been going at it for a while. All right, now these two clowns get to meet a new friend, because if you notice the push bar on the front of the car with the camera, that's a police car. Don't assume, this is the best advice I've ever heard, came from a state trooper who said two things. One was, we'll do things behind the wheel that we would never do if somebody cut us off in the line at the grocery store. Think about it. Also, do not assume that someone is targeting you with their aggressive driving actions. There are many bad drivers out there. A lot of times when someone cuts you off and didn't signal, it's not because they were trying to ruin your day. It's because they're just terrible drivers all the time. And they're not going to understand why you honk at them. They're not going to get it. They don't ever check their blind spot. They probably never will. And you getting angry about it doesn't help the situation. So don't assume that someone is targeting you. And of course, there are times when you run across a driver who is being aggressive, who has a chip on their shoulder or something's going wrong that day, and they're just overtly aggressive on the road and they're in danger. Here are the best tips for that situation. Avoid it. It's absolutely, all of it goes against our instincts, because we want them to know that we're ticked off. That doesn't work. That just escalates the situation. The best thing to do, avoid eye contact with the driver. Don't honk. Don't gesture. You know what I mean? Giving them the friendly one finger wave. Don't do that. Just escalates the problem. And don't camp in the left lane, which is a form of passive aggressive driving, where a driver gets in the left lane, say they're doing the speed limit, no reason anybody needs to go any faster than the speed limit, so I'm going to stay right here in the left lane. That tends to get drivers angry. And it's also against the law in Virginia now. If you are in the left lane on the highway, the passing lane, and there is traffic backing up behind you because it's going faster, a police officer can pull you over even if you're doing the speed limit. Yes, that's true.
As a record number of people hit the road this holiday weekend, an alert about road rage. In tonight's 2020, ABC's Eva Pilgrim explores what to do if you find yourself in a tense situation behind.
And I apologize for the never-ending GMA banner at the bottom of the screen.
Most of us have been a little peeved while driving. It happens. Something about being behind the wheel of a car can make normal, everyday people lose it. But what makes someone go from angry to violent. You've seen the stories leading your local news and polluting YouTube. Just this week, an 18-year-old murdered by an irate driver after she merged into his lane while driving home from the mall just outside of Philadelphia. And last week, this shocking video of an incident on a California freeway leading to a multi-car crash.
Call 911, Chris.
Nearly half of all drivers surveyed have experienced some form of road rage. Captain Jeff Goodwin of the Colorado State Patrol is fighting the uphill battle against an army of hot-tempered motorists.
I used to think it was something like people cutting you off. But, you know, one of the things that people really get angry about, if somebody honks the horn at you because you've sat too long at a light, I think they literally go from the Dr. Jekyll to Mr. Hyde.
We showed the good Captain Goodwin some greatest hits, which also provide some potentially life-saving tips. Rule number 1, don't make eye contact.
This motorist is out of control. And this victim is doing all the right things.
Just stare ahead, don't engage.
Right. Yeah, the minute you engage, who knows where this goes.
Rule number 2, never approach the window.
All right, wow, okay, this is more than over the top because now you have a gun involved.
You never know who's packing heat.
Exactly.
And most important, rule number 3, you don't always have to win. And that's the key. When talking with law enforcement, many of them telling us the worst times are what you would think the busy times on the road. Rush hour Fridays, often the worst because people are just over the week.
Yeah, they're just ready for the weekend. And, you know, there's not really any type of person that's more likely to do this.
No, you see all kinds of people, men, women, all socioeconomic classes. Yeah. We saw men in suits duking it out in the middle of the street. So everything you can imagine happening on the roadways.
Just snapping like that. All right. And you can see Eva's full report tonight on 2020 at 10 p.m. Eastern right here on ABC, especially keeping in mind as we head into this holiday weekend. Thank you, Eva. As a record number.
All right. Did she really say packing heat? Do people use that expression? At the end of the day, you'll feel better about yourself if you don't allow an aggressive driver to bait you into reckless behavior. And I know that's true. When you get home at the end of the day, you're going to feel better about yourself if you didn't let somebody aggravate you into doing something that's out of character for yourself. Buckle up. Seatbelt's your best defense against an impaired or distracted driver. I believe this is the last section, by the way. Seatbelt use gone up in Virginia. It's now 15% of Virginia drivers don't use a seatbelt. Used to be 20%. Virginia's buckle up law is not about getting in your business or telling you what to do behind the wheel. It's a legal reminder of what you should be doing because you can't outsmart physics. Your reactions aren't faster than physics. 3 out of 4 fatal crashes occur within 25 miles of the victim's home. So not buckling up because you're just going to 7-Eleven. That doesn't make sense. Most crashes causing death or injury occur at speeds under 40 miles an hour. So, well, I don't need to buckle up because I'm not driving on the highway. That doesn't make sense either. Our most dangerous roads are surface streets. You know, highways are built for speed. Still, roughly 15% of Virginia drivers don't wear their seat belts. Here is a video that'll show you why everyone in the vehicle should buckle up. If you're in a sedan, for instance, like this one, if I can get it to play. It's not going to play nice. Okay. What you would see is the unbelted rear passenger flies forward into the back of the driver, which has to be painful and also difficult to recover from. Let me get this restarted. I apologize. Don't know why the video completely crashed. This is the last slide anyway. A seatbelt's your best defense against an impaired, reckless, or distracted driver. Buckle up every trip, every time. That's the best advice. If it's the only thing you take away today, is that you should buckle up for the people who love you and make sure they buckle up as well. Everybody in the vehicle, buckle up before you take off, because it's not necessarily you got to be prepared for, but the other guy. I am Rich Jacobs. I am not Kristen Petway. Maybe that was part of the problem, is that our log on is for Kristen. But anyway, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for attending, and hope you get something out of it, even if it's just to remember to buckle that seatbelt so that you're prepared if any of the other stuff that I talked about should happen. Thanks again. Have a great day.